Hey Wilds, Lauren Wild here. I wanted to do a quick update on Mercury Retrograde in Aquarius. So like I told you guys, I would put out a little quick blurb about it, about 10 minutes, which is what Instagram will allow me to post and be able to store it. So essentially what I'm looking at really quickly is my favorite planner, right? So I'm an astrologer. I use it. It's called the Magic of I Planner. This is my third year using it and I love it. It is a really, excuse me, sorry. It's an amazing tool to grow in your astrology, and this is what I use and I check in with every day. So the first thing to recognize about Mercury retrograde is that Mercury rules communications. It rules the mindset, it rules electronics, it rules your thought process and the conscious mind, right? So Mercury is the co-ruler of both Gemini and Virgo, which are both very analytical. They have different methods of what they're trying to figure out. Mercury, which rules Gemini, is very curious, it's very interested, it wants to learn because it wants to learn, right? Whereas Aquarius is very analyzing and accurate, and it wants the data, right? Like it wants the answer, it wants the computation, it wants like a Loctite sense of proof. It's the analyst, okay? And so they're a little different in that way. Mercury in Aquarius is an air sign. Most of the Mercury retrogrades this year will be in air signs predominantly, and so air signs are communication, thought, writing, texting, emails. And then Aquarius is the lens of the collective, the community, your friendships, the bigger mind, and then also the internet, right? So we're definitely going to see some sense of challenges, because as of yesterday, Venus, which rules relationships, finances, and your value system, also moved into Aquarius, which means that by the time we have the Aquarius new moon, it's going to be so stacked. We will have the sun, we'll have Mercury retrograde, we will have Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Pallas, and then the moon at that point, because it will be the new moon. And so it will definitely be bringing a lot of energy towards that. It's time to pay attention though. So the big thing about Mercury retrograde is that it's not a time to start something new. It's a time to revise, to refresh, to review, to rethink. Okay, so wherever Aquarius lies for you in your chart, it's the water bear. It looks like two little waves. That is where Aquarius is for you. You want to look at the house that it's in and then research what the overlaying energy of that house holds. Okay, and that's where it will be affecting you the most. Now, Mercury retrograde, it started on Saturday, right? But the retro, like the shadow leading up to it, it began on January 15th until the 30th. So that was 2 weeks where we started to kind of get a theme of what was going to happen. Now, with any planet that retrogrades, you want to pay attention, especially to Mercury, the first 3 to 4 days before it stations. That's where it has the most trickery. That's usually where like the theme comes from. And then you want to pay attention to like 3 or 4 days before it stations direct again. Okay, so Mercury retrograde in its actual essence is January 30th through February 20th. So it's not that long. It's only like 3 weeks. Then we have the retro shade, which is 2 more weeks, which is where Mercury will trek from the degree point that it retrograded back to and then cross all of those degrees again. This is where third time's the charm comes from, okay? So what happens with Mercury retrograde is it doesn't actually go backwards. It just looks like it. But because Mercury moves 3 times faster than the Earth, it's very quick. But what does happen is that it stops, it stations. And so what happens is that all of this energy just kind of flies past us. It like still sends all of this energy, and it has this, anytime they're retrograde, especially Mercury, and it's the mind, it feels like we're going backwards in time, okay? So it just has this sense of like it's time to rethink. You might get lots of strange, you might find yourself like moving through boxes or pictures or things that take you back in time. You might all of a sudden start thinking about an ex relationship and how it affected you. Number 1 rule, don't text your ex during Mercury retrograde. That was my son, Judah. And just let the 3 weeks of it bring up the things that you need to mull over and review. It's not time to start something new, okay? It is time to review the things that are already there. If at the end of Mercury retrograde, you still want to break up with so-and-so, or you still want to quit your job, or you still want to sell your house, then do it. But you don't make major changes during Mercury's retrograde transit. It's just a time to rethink and review things, okay? It might also be a time that you experience a lot of miscommunications. Recognize that Saturn is also in Aquarius right now, as well as Jupiter, which are two planets that require a lot of growth to get the benefits from them. So, we kind of kicked off Mercury retrograde the day before with the full moon in Leo at 9 degrees, which was opposite Jupiter in Aquarius. And it kind of brought this big, I'm on a video, you need to be quiet. It brought this big sense of like a growth point or a push, and it was conjunct Saturn. So it has that flavor in it this time, okay? And it's important to pay attention to that. It has that flavor. The other thing is that, there's a lot of Aquarian placements that Mercury is going to trek back over. It's going to pull all the way back to 11 degrees. It's going to go over, it's going to come into an opposition with Mars. It's going to also come into a cazimi with the sun, which is like a light bulb moment that we get about 3 times a year. And so there's like these moments of reflection. It's time to pay attention, and it has a very Aquarian theme to it, which is the age, the paradigm that we're moving into. And so what it's going to come up against is it's going to come up against old, structured, patriarchal thinking. It's trying to create linear society, right? So it's teaching us lessons. It's a voice box, right? It's the message of Aquarius that we need to pay attention to. And so it's a time where, you're really meant to relearn, to renew, to rethink things. When we get to the end of it, that's where it's time to make actual choices, okay? Also, by the time, that it's out of its retro shade, it will be getting pretty close to Ostara, which is the birth of the year, the birth of the sun, in the pagan wheel of the year. And so it's time to actually like plant the seeds and set the intentions. So it's nice that it's in here. Really, it's like giving us this revision period to be able to really like sift through what it is we want to actually get off the ground. Okay. Jupiter in Aquarius, wherever Jupiter is like really where we're trying to expand. And so it's like you might have a bunch of really great ideas that are coming up. Mercury retrograde is going to help you kind of sift through like, what do you think is actually reasonable, right? Like, what can you actually do this year? Okay. So the big thing is understanding that during this period of time, especially this weekend, the Venus is going to come into a conjunction with Saturn, which rules relationships. And then this weekend also, Venus is going to square Uranus and Taurus, which is in a weak conjunction of Mars. But it's like a intense coming weekend that I want you guys to be prepared for. The sun or Venus is technically already in a conjunction to Saturn, so it's putting, more intensity on relationships, a need for this push-pull of like growth, expansion, freedom, but also commitment. So it feels strange in that way. The thing about Aquarius is that it's co-ruled by Saturn and Uranus. And so because Uranus is in that fixed square, and then also to Saturn, and then also because we've got Jupiter in there, we've got a lot of growth, a lot of push, that it feels like a big self-growth area. Okay, so let me give you the like basics of the dates and the degrees. Okay, so the retro shadow started January 15th until January 30th. The actual Mercury retrograde is January 30th, started at 26 degrees of Aquarius, and then it stations retrograde back to 11 degrees of Aquarius, which we will now experience a sense of directness. Things like it will start to move forward again on February 20th, but the retro shade, okay, is incredibly important. That is the part where we get to apply the lessons and the reviews that we've learned, and that will be from February 20th until March 13th, and then we will be in the clear as Mercury begins to hit the 27th degree of Aquarius. I hope that this was helpful for you guys. Stay safe. Remember, slow down, rethink, revise, and then make your decisions once we get to the space between February 20th and March 13th. I'll see you guys later. Bye.